Daniel Keller is one of the most vibrant voices in the crypto community. His work with Flux has established him a reputation as a passionate defender of the industry and the rights of the miners. His rigorous efforts have earned him both praise and criticism, and he has come here today to share his insights into the future of Flux and proof of useful work. Daniel, thank you for being here. I'd like to start by saying how excited I am to have you here, and I appreciate your effort to stay engaged and open with the community. Recent events have really kind of opened up my eyes to the difficulty of extracting information about these projects and the amount of time that it takes to truly understand the complexity of so many of them. Having someone with your expertise and insights in the space is very welcome. So for that, I really appreciate you being here today. I'd like to start with how you feel about the mining space at this very moment as it pertains to both here and throughout the world.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me on today, and I appreciate all the nice things you just said about me. That's it's nice to hear that every now and again, and I do appreciate that. I'll tell you, I'm very bullish on mining. I think that we've definitely seen some really good innovative technologies in the space. We're starting to see mining mature to the next level. I think at times we were still kind of stuck in 2017 in terms of mining. So looking at what's the next iteration of the technology? What does proof of useful work look like? How does that impact mining? How does that impact us overall? I mean, Joe Biden came out today and said he wants to put a 30% tax on all miners in the United States. That's super bullish because if they're taxing it or trying to figure out how they're going to tax it, that means that they're starting to accept the fact that it doesn't go away overnight, or they can't flip some magic switch and then you just go off into the ether. You know what I mean? It's more it's starting to become a more mature ecosystem. Miners are business operators is really what it comes down to. They understand what they're doing. They understand the business model, delayed return on investments, how to, you got mining, electric, infrastructure, all these different things. So I'm really excited to see what mining is going to become and continue to iterate to. So overall, pretty good across the board.
Well, one thing I know is hard for those of us that do live in the United States is to kind of remember that crypto is worldwide. It doesn't just start and end here in the US. And regardless of the policy stance that these leaders take towards the mining industry, it's just kind of, in my opinion, it's been a Trojan horse from the very beginning. And regardless of what they decide to do in the short term, it's not going away. And they're going to have to deal with it. And I think you're right. I think that they really have to figure out how to position themselves to take advantage of it. I feel like, there's a lot of legacy players that are kind of getting into the space, and a lot of this is just posturing to slow things down. When you
Yeah, 100%.
when you look at, let's say, for example, the XRP case, there were people that thought that would be over in a few short months, and then there were others that postulated it would take years. And I knew from the very beginning, or at least speculated, that we were looking at a very long-term fight because, like I said, they know that they can't stop it. It's just about getting in place and kind of pushing out the industry players that threaten their monopoly, right? But having said that, I'm still very bullish on mining. Obviously, I created a channel in the middle of the bear market to kind of show people that, hey, I'm not going anywhere. If I was going to leave, it would have been, when Ethereum went proof of stake. But, here we are. I think that the term proof of useful work is a pretty broad description, in my opinion. And personally, I find hashing to be a very useful form of an energy usage. I mean, if it replaces our current corrupt and broken monetary system, then I'm all for it. But the cries from environmentalists is probably not going to get any quieter. And for that reason, the industry is focused on finding ways to implement additional work while hashing. How difficult of a process has this been for you guys to figure out a way to do both simultaneously?
let's take a look at the term first and foremost, proof of use of work. So because there's a lot of folks in the space that are utilizing that term, but they're not necessarily doing what we consider useful work. When I say we, I can only speak for Flux, the project, and myself. When the useful proof of work paper was written by the MIT, they didn't understand how to use the complexities. And I mean, it was one of Satoshi Nakamoto's greatest quandaries. It's what happens when we reach critical mass to the compute resources, right? So you have all these ASICs that are sitting, mining, all day long. They really have one sole purpose. And you have to think outside the box, because essentially we think of crypto and or blockchain fixing the financial sector, but in reality, it's really much more than that. It starts to permeate the standard tech sectors, right? So whether it's electronic medical records or supply chain management or whatever it is, you can lay it on top of blockchain. Useful work becomes more than just transactional validation, transactional validators, and consensus mechanism. It begins to give you the opportunity to take those compute resources and utilize them in different areas where it's required. So the way that Flux, and I can only speak for Flux, the way Flux envisions it is that you can continue the blockchain structure that you currently have with proof of work. So continue mining, continue the miners, but there will be a particular portion of the proof of work side, because remember, proof of stake is already proof of use of work. You can run front ends, back ends, WordPress, websites, nodes, you name it. You can ride that. That all runs on, 50% of our network, which is our proof of use of work model. Gotcha. And what we're working on now is the second iteration of proof of use of work, which is to bring our miners in. So let's say there's hypothetically 150 to 200,000 graphics cards running on Flux today. If you could take a portion of those, let's say 40%, and actually let them leave the network and go back out and perform use of work to a marketplace, right? Then come back to the network and continue to keep validating. You'll be able. This is exactly the way we're building it. So, we're looking at it differently than, say, a Dynex or somebody like that. ICP tried to say that they were proof of use of work, which is total bullshit. I mean, it totally smacked. I mean, with Satoshi Nakamoto called it proof of work for a reason. It's not proof of maybe work staking. No, I mean, it's like legitimately proof of work. So, I think there are folks out there that are trying to head in that direction, and I'm all for it. I think everybody should be developing it because, a rising tide lifts all boats, and we're not going to conquer, the next iteration of Web3 and, technology without working together. So, but we look at it a little bit different. We look at it more holistically. So we don't really care much about the financial sector. We're looking more at the standard tech stacks. Even look at our partner list. Our partner list, the OVA firmly entrenched in Web 2, but they understand the value of having on-demand compute resources. And that's where Flux comes into play. It lets us have the best of both worlds. You can continue to keep mining, you can continue to keep having your decentralization, having decentralized systems administrators on one side and our miners on the other side, and then they're providing those compute resources back through a marketplace. When you really get down to brass tacks, it's about being able to put the compute back into the hands of the people, and that's exactly what Flux is working on.
Man, everything that you said just prompted me to think of a lot more questions, but I want to circle back to the incentive structure on, mining the algorithm or securing the blockchain versus performing work. But one thing that has always resonated with me is the importance of residual income. I don't like to use the term passive because it implies lack of effort, and we all know that mining is not very passive. And for that reason, I've always been into streams of income like home security or rental properties or insurance. And knowing what I know now because of those industries, I see Run on Flux business's model, and I can't help but get excited about the use case for Flux and the buying pressure when Flux is required to utilize it. What can you tell us about the projections of scarcity as Flux is used to pay for these services that Flux is offering?
Perfect question, and that's one that many people should be asking more of. And you know what I mean, because tokenomics and longevity of the project, they're absolutely paramount. I mean, you have to have these pieces in play. So I'm with you, and I agree 100%. I think passive income, the term passive income is bullshit. I don't like it. It's active income because you're constantly hustling and working, especially when you're mining. So, one of the things that Flux has looked at, especially with our parallel mining, you can mine Flux, but you're also mining 8, 9, 10 other chains at the same time, allows people to really do something unique. They can mine in the past, because if they've held the asset, they're going to get the snapshot. They can mine in the present, which they're currently mining, and they can mine into the future by speculating with the additional assets that'll be added through Flux. This is super important. So Flux is 100% a utility-based asset. And I would even go so far as to say, other than maybe Bitcoin, we're about the only other utility-based asset. In that, every single component within Flux has Flux baked into it. You want to deploy a server, you have to have Flux. Front end, back end, website, you got to have Flux. You want to use decentralized two-factor authentication, ZellID, you got to have Flux. If you want to, deploy a WordPress, whatever it is, you have to have Flux. So that economic model was, we didn't build any bullshit gas token or anything like that. We were very specific on how Flux will utilize everything. The XDAO, that utilizes Flux. You have to be a holder of Flux. And by doing that, you bring people back and create a natural supply or demand on supply. And Flux, over 50% of our total circulating supply is held in infrastructure. So I don't know, there's not a lot of projects out there that could say that. I mean, literally we have better part of 15,000 nodes running right now. And people lock up varying degrees depending on which node they want to run. And we're getting ready to roll out another node, our Cirrus node on top of that, which is we call kind of like a micro node. It's an off-chain node, edge compute, AI pieces like that. So I think overall, it comes down to, making sure you understand that the people that you're working with, the miners and the node operators, are your business partners, having at your heart decentralization and understanding for this plot project to flourish, for us to be able to hand this to our kids and hand them to their kids and so on and so forth, we have to put our best effort in across the board. So, I think it's very astute that you look at those things and you start to research those things. I say I put our tokenomics up against anybody in the space. We have a fixed cap, 440 million. That's it, no more. We have Flux on the main chain plus 8 other PAs as well. We're going to have 10 probably here by the end of the year, maybe beginning of the year next year. So Binance Smart Chain, KDA, Ethereum, the list goes on, Ergo, the list goes on and on. So our affinity to allowing people to stay with the project and remain with the project, even in this kind of weird bear market, this downtrend, our node count continues to keep going up. So that should tell you something. People believe in the project. They believe in the delayed return on investment. They believe in the long-term benefit that this project's going to bring to many ecosystems.
I've been paying attention to the chart when it comes to WordPress and those customers, and it seems like a pretty healthy chart. And I can imagine, as more people investigate what Flux offers, that's just going to go parabolic at some point. But do you have any kind of projections based on what you're seeing right now? Is there anything in the pipeline that you think is really going to ramp up the people that utilize that?
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to remember, WordPress is in beta. I mean, we still haven't took the wrapper off, so to speak, and let it loose. I mean, we're only using one of the 3 tiers that, and I can tell you that those tiers are already implemented and ready to go. But we're continuing to work out all the bugs because we're super big about having products that actually function the way that they're supposed to. I hate these projects that launch some bullshit MVP or whatever, and it doesn't work 3/4 of the time. Or, even some of these exchanges that run well, the minute the price starts to fluctuate, the exchange goes down because the influx of people coming onto the platform. So, some statistics for that is there's, just in the short beta period, it's 300 plus websites that have deployed on Flux. Our anticipation by the end of the year is to have around 100,000. Nice. So, and we believe we can get there. There's large players in the space where we want to supply Flux as the go-to. So in other words, could you see like a Wix utilizing a back end on Flux? Absolutely. So we're in the process of really doing business development around that and figuring out what's the right fit for us, because we want it to be the right fit for us. We're the cheapest, the fastest, the best, and we're decentralized. So those three things, and making sure you have an actual project that delivers what you intend to deliver, is a big piece. So right now, Flux has almost 4,000 unique applications, 40,000 plus deployments. It continues to go. If you're looking at the charts, Bunny Analyst puts out a great chart. It's straight parabolic like this. It's the move up. We've already beat our year 2 projections in the first 2 months of this year, and now we've already beat our year 3 projections in this first quarter of this year. So
Wow.
that's impressive. And as a strategy guy, I apparently didn't plan high enough. I mean, I was super excited. You always say, under promise and over deliver, but that's a little bit off. That's a little bit out there.
Yeah, when you're off on projections, you definitely want it to go that direction as opposed to the other way. That's for
Hell
sure.
yes. yes. I think the community would have skinned me if it went the other way. But no, I'm really pleased with the way things are continuing to grow. Flux has 68 different people working on the project right now. Zelcore has about 11 to 12, I believe it is. The project, in terms of maturity, it's really came on like gangbusters. And we're seeing projects like Presearch that have basically almost maxed out, their usage, 6,500 plus deployments. So you multiply that by 3, you're starting to get an idea of the scale of what we can do. So, I think it's a good thing overall. And I think from a projection standpoint, I don't ever speculate on price because I don't care. You know what I mean? It's like everybody always asks me, what's the price that you believe Flux would be, or where you would sell some Flux? I'm like, nowhere near where we're at. Not even close, not even the same ballpark. And, so we're very, if this was a baseball game, we didn't even start the game yet.
Yeah, I can imagine, the way the tokenomics works, the halvings and all of these things. It's, a lot of miners, especially GPU miners, we go from one thing to the other. We're constantly searching for what is most profitable. And ever since the Ethereum merge, miners have had a lot of different strategies. You got those that hold, you got some that sell the peaks and then buy the dips. You got some that only sell to cover power. And I've talked to a lot of miners, and one thing that seems to be pretty common is there's a lot of them that have enough conviction in Flux that whatever is most profitable, they're mining and then they're buying Flux. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, that's the awesome part of, even Satoshi Nakamoto said, in a roundabout way, if you don't like it, fork it. If you don't like, or you want to support something, you do what's most logical. I would say the majority of miners are business people, so they understand that they may need to switch between different projects for, to pay the electric bill, to pay for the, rental of their place, whatever the scenario is. So they're definitely gonna play that. And by the way, I was born into the world as a shitcoin miner. I was mining everything and anything for a very long time. Early Ethereum, early Zcash, a lot of different stuff. I actually had one of the largest mining farms in the East Coast.
Oh, wow.
And I was doing nuclear power before these yo-hos were doing nuclear power. That they just came out the other day and said, in Pennsylvania we were doing nuclear power with 3 Mile Island. So the one thing that I found specifically for me is once you find a project that you believe in and their ethos resonates with you, and you feel comfortable about their tokenomics, you feel comfortable. They're not just some flash in the pan bullshit project that shows up. 80% of it goes to a VC. The rest of it goes, the miners get a little pittance, and you call it a day. So I think we're seeing the space start to mature, because what miners look like 4 or 5 years ago is not what they look like today. Very matured. They're continuing to understand that these are things. Do I blame anybody for jumping off Flux to go mine, Ironfish or Dynex or whatever the hell it's called? No, I don't blame them. But we'll be here waiting for you when you get back, because ultimately you'll always come back to Flux, because in the end, we're the ones that really are trying to push mining to the next level, so that you don't have to in the future be having to jump from shitcoin to shitcoin, right? You can keep your rigs parked at Flux, and you'll benefit from the useful work model, because if somebody taps you for proof of useful work, so let's hypothetically say ChatGPT needs, 10,000 GPUs and you get yanked and you get plugged into that useful work model, now you're making money what ChatGPT is paying for those resources. So, in the end, we're not like every other project in the terms of, proof of work mining, because conceptually the way that we're looking at it is a lot different than these other projects are looking at it.
For sure. I want to move on to the community's questions, but I did think of one more thing that I wanted to ask, and that is the way that I see companies getting into crypto is stifled because of the posture that surrounds clarity, right? So we're all kind of waiting in anticipation of there to be clear rules of the road. And I think that companies, once they have that clarity, they will start to partner with crypto projects to solve their goals. But what do you see in that particular case where we're dealing with all these different use cases that could be utilized now, but we're not really seeing companies jump in and partner with crypto projects because they're waiting on that clarity? I mean, obviously, it mainly affects us here in the U.S., but what do you think about the future and the time frame in which we start to see companies partnering with crypto?
What if I told you that the current regulatory kind of nebulous attitude that the U.S. hasn't changed for the past 4 years, right? Maybe there's been some more rhetoric around it, but it's basically by design to stifle innovation at this point. So I would say this, the projects that are going to develop in this space and know the value of the space, they're still doing it. They don't give a shit. They're going to continue to keep building products out. We work with Lumen, we work with OVH. Did these guys get scared off because the U.S. decides they, whether to shit or get off the pot? You know what I mean? In the end, what it comes down to is you build the technology, and whether it's here in the States, which we hope they will embrace it, but if they don't, that's okay too, because we're a global village at this point. So, the United States has had first mover advantage for a very long time, and I'm a U.S. resident myself. But if they end up not adopting blockchain technologies and these companies start to leave the United States and go to other places, I'm fine with that too. There's a reason why Influx, the parent company of the co-founders, the development company, sits in the UK. It doesn't sit in the U.S. Would I like to sit in the U.S.? Hell yes, I'd like to sit in the U.S. But guess what? We aren't going to until there is a solid regulatory guideline, but that doesn't prevent you from building. So I think people use it as a almost like a FUD or suppression mechanism where they're like, oh, the U.S. said they're going to go after, they got Wells notices over here, and the SEC is over here, and it's like, it doesn't matter. You keep developing, you keep building, you keep moving on. If you don't like the way that landscape is shaping up, then you leave. Coinbase just started their global exchange. They're like, you know what? Doesn't work for me. I'm going to go somewhere else. And there are too many other places on the globe that are very embracing. Now, that doesn't deter the underlying technology. I mean, the U.S. government, if they think for 1 second they could come out and ban crypto, they would have already done it 3 years ago. They know they can't do it. There's a reason why they're trying to put 30% tax on it. They're talking about environmental impact. They're talking about all these other things. So our job is to educate the masses about the benefits of compute, right? And in my case, Flux and proof of use work, and why it benefits everyone. But I think it's a red herring. I really do. I think this regulatory clarity thing gets way overplayed. People like to bellyache and boo-hoo about it. But in reality, if you're going to build a project, you go where you can go, right? So if I'm in the state of Pennsylvania or the state of Maryland or state of Delaware, and they're not conducive to me doing the project I want to do, I would go to Utah or Nevada or wherever I have to go. And it's the same way globally. So I think the U.S. is really screwing themselves in the long run, because I think that they're going to miss out on what is the next, .com boom. And because I think what you're going to see with blockchain technologies is they start to move out of the tech sector or the financial sector, which doesn't want a solution to a problem. They never wanted a solution with blockchain or Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. Mm-hmm. They never asked for it. They didn't want it. Okay. But the rest of the world wants those solutions. the electronic medical records, the supply chain management folks, asset management. Tokenization of real estate on the blockchain. These are problems that are looking for a solution. This one, not so much. So, build your project so it doesn't necessarily, attack the financial sector, or maybe it bolsters or makes better that. But also look at these other areas as well, because I think people get too focused in this whole, and trust me, I'm a cypherpunk at heart. I love the disruptive technology. It's why I get up in the morning, right? So, but also you need to start to look at what other areas can you disrupt and be embraced in. One of the projects that Flux came out with is called Project Paradigm. It's electronic medical records on the blockchain. We have a MVP that worked. It's great, and eventually you're going to see that start to roll out. It'll look a lot like Zelcore. You'll be able to carry your EMR right directly inside of Zelcore, so you move out of like having that custody-based platform to more like curation of your digital identity, including your health records, and maybe all of your passport could be on there, whatever. I mean, driver's license, who knows? You can expand it beyond that. So what I'm trying to say is, long and short, is I think we need to worry less about what the U.S. is doing and more about what we're doing as projects and founders and community members to push us to the next version of blockchain.
Absolutely. And we could talk about this subject for many, many more hours, but I know the audience is probably anxious to get their questions answered. So
sure.
I think we'll go ahead and move on to some. The first one got asked more than once, so I want to ask this one first, and that is, everybody wants to know when there will be seed phrases in Zelcore. And one person specifically said, I'm locked out of Flux. About 2 weeks ago, it would no longer accept my password. And yes, I have it written down offline. And since I can't reset it, I need a seed phrase to recover it. So anything that you can tell us about seed phrases or any kind of workaround for this particular person with that problem?
Well, if they didn't write down if they didn't export their private keys, they're kind of screwed. I hate to say it. So I'm sorry to hear that, but that would be that way in any crypto wallet. If you're using a crypto wallet and you're not getting your seed phrase out of there, or your private key, you're kind of shit out of luck. But I will say this, Zelcore works a little bit different than every other platform out there, and I will say, it's been 5 going on 6 years. We haven't had a breach, and the reason being is because we do things differently than everyone else. So I don't see us ever changing away from the current account mechanism that we have in place, the username, password, and then that's hashed, and then that actually produces your private key. If you create a username and password, you create them uniquely, and you write those down, and then you also export your private key. It's as safe as any other wallet out there. So I would say this. We get soft because we live in an environment where if we forget a password, we can go to whoever that third party is and say, hey, I forgot my password. Can you reset it? Or, if you have a problem at your bank, you drive down to the local branch and you walk in there and you say, hey, can you help me out? Those are the creature comforts, but the entire time they're giving you those creature comforts, they're screwing you over in the end. And we're seeing this, with the current banking crisis.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have to become more personally accountable for your funds. You have to become more involved in your, custody and your process, and that means you have to also educate yourself. So, do I think that will change? No, it's going to stay the same. We might augment something down the road and add that additional ability to do like a 24, character or 24 word seed phrase or something like that. But I'm not really thinking that it really needs to happen at this particular point in time.
I do see a continuing trend where we're constantly trading our freedom and our responsibilities for convenience. And
yes,
anybody that's listening out here to this, I had a mentor that just drilled this into my head. In the difficulty lies the opportunity. If it were easy, everybody would be doing it.
Amen, brother.
Next question I got here is, and I think I know the answer to this already, but people want to know, is there any possibility that Flux will change algorithms to reduce power consumption? And whether it's yes or no, why?
I would say this: if you've set your graphics cards up correctly, and you're not trying to juice them for every last little bit of hash you can get out of them, Flux is very energy appropriate. We have no intention of changing the algorithm now. So it's going to, even when proof of use of work comes in, there may be some tweaks to it, but there's really going to be, it's going to be the same thing that they're using now. So we need to remain ASIC resistant. So, I mean, there's projects out there that everybody flocked to because they thought they were the best thing since sliced bread, and along come FPGAs and ASICs and kick them in the ass. So, that's one thing you're not going to worry about with Flux. So I would say do the research, ask the questions, find out the optimal settings. If you do that, your power draw will be much less. And the other thing is, don't juice these cards out. Don't overclock the shit out of them and expect it not to use more electric. You know what I mean? So if you want to keep the longevity of your card and the electric footprint down, get a couple more cards and keep them at a very reasonably overclocked rate. So, and we see that a lot with people, Ravencoin, especially, and a few other projects that people try to crank the shit out of them, and the next thing you know, they're using more power and they're killing their cards. So yeah, don't do that.
I think most of the miners out there understand that, the hardened algorithms, let's say memory hardened algorithms, are going to be a lot more resistant against ASICs and FPGAs being on the network. And these core intensive algorithms have been shooting for the adoption from FPGAs and ASICs. And, I'm a GPU miner at heart. I've gone the ASIC route in the past. And in fact, that was kind of my intro to mining. And I had a very, very bad experience with a good friend of mine. He shipped all of our ASICs to a company in Canada, and about half of them showed up online, and over the course of several years trying to get them to get the other ones online and one of them going out. Eventually what happened was they all went offline and they stopped responding to us. And then we found out they stopped responding to everybody, and that equipment just disappeared into the ether.
Shit.
Yeah. So I me personally, when it comes to hosting, I think that it's certainly necessary for some people, but I prefer to always have the hardware in my hands and in my possession and control everything. And for anybody listening, if you have that capability, that's priority number one. And then, if it just doesn't make sense for you financially, then start looking at other options. But never send your hardware somewhere that you can't trust and is not active in the community and can be held accountable and has a reputation to uphold. But so the next thing that I wanted to talk about was, initially there seemed to be some type of distinction with the partnership with NVIDIA. Several people have asked me to ask you this question, and that is, can you elaborate on the NVIDIA partnership, and is there any distinguishing difference that Flux has that other partnerships don't have?
Well, we all know NVIDIA is not as very friendly to miners, and that isn't why we engaged NVIDIA from the get-go. We really engaged NVIDIA around their Jetson protocol, the AI edge compute pieces. And we immediately integrated them into the Flux network. So you can run a Jetson, you can run a Raspberry Pi. But our goal was, it's very easy to work with partners that you like. It's very difficult to work with the partners that you don't. But the ones that are going to yield more results in the long run are to work with the ones that you need to work with. So like NVIDIA. So are you going to see a Flux graphics card tomorrow? Probably not. But we've been very vocal on the internal comms channels, specifically around how maybe you guys should embrace mining, but not necessarily how you've embraced mining in the past. So, proof of use of work is going to use a shit ton of NVIDIA cards. And as a matter of fact, the first version of proof of use of work will not support AMD, it will only support NVIDIA for a short period of time. So we already are working on the build out for the AMD model. So for something like that, you're running your Jetsons on, the node side of the network, plus you're mining with a ton of NVIDIA graphics cards on the other side of the network. It starts to present a lot of opportunities. So I would say when we were accepted into the Inception program, it made sense for us. Am I going to sit here and tell you that I love NVIDIA and everything about what they do? I don't. And I don't think that they love miners, but they do love the fact that we are utilizing their infrastructure and hardware, and we are going to capitalize on those pieces. So, I think sometimes you have to make change from within, and that's exactly what we've done with NVIDIA.
I see them kind of shifting business models. Recently, they've had some statements that's kind of posturing themselves as, not just a gaming hardware provider. Now they're kind of leaning into this AI narrative and stuff like that. Do you feel as though there's a little bit of competition between them and between miners?
100%. I mean, the holy grail right now is to be able to provide compute resources to the AI, movement. Okay. So, I mean, who better than NVIDIA, who makes the graphics cards to stand up? So I could see them definitely standing up an entire arm of their, which they already have to a certain extent. And they look at someone like Flux, who has proof of use of work. They look at them as a competition, So it's going to be a very interesting next couple of years because, I've said it before and I say it again. We're partners with people that are logical partners, but that doesn't mean if they go a direction we don't want to go, then we're not going to go. We're not going to sell out who we are as a project. That's the one thing we make very clear to all of our partners at the beginning is that we are who we are. We're decentralized. We're a community-based project. We're proof of work, at our heart. We are ASIC resistant. We're, work on developing these things. People know when they meet us exactly what we came to do. So, I think they're in a really kind of unique. They have a unique opportunity. In other words, they can supply a lot of those resources to these AI folks, and they do look at folks like Flux as probably as a long-term competitor.
Okay, so one thing that I'm really interested in, and I think a lot of people are interested in too, is the dynamics of switching between mining the algorithm as opposed to doing the proof of useful work part. And how could you describe switching between one and the other? I mean, is this going to affect overclocks, power consumption, hardware longevity?
Nope. No, the way that it works is what happens is an order comes into the marketplace and it creates a queue, and the queue starts to, tap a particular person. So say Dan has I have a mining farm and I've got 50 cards running in this mining farm, and the operating system that runs in the background assigns whatever the queue is to the next round robin. So, if Dan got tapped for proof of use of work for 10 of his cards, he goes into that queue. Then there's a mild delay. So basically what it does is it allows those cards to leave and go back over to the marketplace, and then allows them to process the job. And when they're done, they just come back again. So from an overclocking standpoint, we don't care. It's going to be base clocking over here. We're not running the piss out of the cards. We just want them to do what they were built to do. Now, if you overclock them on this side, it'll automatically pick up your settings as you move back to the main chain, and it'll just be like turning your rig back on, and you'll start running again on those cards. Now, I probably could explain it a little bit more eloquently. There's other folks that can do it a little bit better than I. But the general concept is this. If you have 10 cards, you can get tapped for 5 of those for useful work. It leaves the network. It goes in, it performs whatever it needs to do on that useful work model, and when it's done, it comes back again. 70% of our network never leaves, right? It always keeps that on there. So we're only taking portionally, and we don't know what that magic number is. Is it 50%? Is it, 70%? Is it 40%? We don't know. But because we have to make sure that our transactional and validation and consensus mechanism doesn't get impacted.
How does that affect the reward structure? So let's say, for example, you've got a 10-card rig and 5 of that leaves to go do proof of useful work. Is it still getting rewarded in Flux at the same rate as just... No, okay.
Hell of a lot more. Yeah, because basically, think of it this way: ChatGPT spends about $175,000 to $100,000 or $200,000 a day on GPU resources. So if you get tapped, you're going to get whatever the market value is for that. Now, granted, it's going to be quite a bit less than say AWS or some of these other GPU providers, but you're going to be paid the premium for whoever tapped that work. So let's say the job was for 50 cards. you're taking the amount of money paid for those compute resources and then distributing it back to those 50 cards, plus there's a part of it that goes back to the foundation as well. So, it works. It works almost in harmony. You'll be happy when you wake up in the morning and you see you got tapped for use of work, because you're going to be making more money that day than, and it'll show in your dashboard. There's like a nice little dashboard. It's all set up, and it'll show, card 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They tap for use of work. They're tied up for the next, 4 hours or something like that.
Is there?
So you'll know. But you will be rewarded back in Flux again. So that's the nice thing about it, is you don't ever have to worry about setting up additional wallets or anything like that. You're just going to get additional Flux in your wallet because you were tapped for use of work.
So in two examples that you've given, it's not the entire rig that does the proof of useful work part. It seems like some of them stay behind and provide the security for the network. But
yes.
Is there a particular reason, or can you explain in further detail why the entire rig doesn't go towards the proof of useful work?
Because we're only looking at them as the graphics cards. So when you set up your rig, you're setting it up as in your mind it's one rig, one set of cards. But in reality, it's multiple cards hatching at the same time. So what we're looking at is in this round robin is to basically create a list of all the graphics cards that are on useful work, and we're just cycling through them. So maybe we only need 3 on your rig, and you've got 6 hanging there, right? So, and that's all we'll tap into. So, there will be, I will tell you, down the road, we'll look at some enterprise pieces. We call it enterprise proof of useful work, which allows you to basically dedicate your entire farm to useful work only. So that you would obviously get incentivized at a higher rate than somebody that's mining and then gets tapped into that as well. So there's lots of different things that you're going to see as this thing rolls out. The nice thing about it is it's going to be very super simple. And as a matter of fact, we want people with regular computers and CPUs to be able to participate as well, because CPU power is going to be in the marketplace.
Awesome. So what is the marketplace going to look like for proof of useful work? Is this something that's going to compare to, let's say, for instance, how Clore has their marketplace set up? I know Okta.space is trying to get set up that way. And then you've got Dynex that's using this neuromorphic network where 95% of their network supposedly is going towards the jobs and only 5% securing the network. But
that sounds legit.
Yeah. How does the marketplace work? Are these customers coming directly to Flux, or will they have some type of interface where they can submit the work that they want and then get some type of expectation on what it's going to cost them in Flux in order to do it?
Dude, we already have the marketplace running for WordPress and for pretty much nodes, front ends, back ends, everything else, and you can already see that it run on Flux.io. The new marketplace that's being created for proof of useful work is absolutely insane. It is the best looking marketplace I've ever seen in my entire life, and I've been in technology for 30 years, man. So I'm not green to this world. And yes, basically what it does is you go in, you can pick out, how many graphics cards you need. It'll tell you exactly what the pricing structure is, how long you'll need them, estimated time of work, so on and so forth, and you just hit buy. And by the way, you can pay with Flux or you can pay with fiat as well. So this is a game changer in the sense that, it really creates this almost like App Store scenario, like, Apple App Store, where you can get on-demand compute resources. So we're looking at universities and institutions that students can use this as they're working, all the way up to like high-end chat GPT level stuff. Okay. I could see us definitely being like an overflow for ChatGPT or other programs like that. And Microsoft has a pretty decent footprint for GPUs, but they're not all that. And I could definitely see, as the demand continues to grow, that we would just act like an overflow.
Okay. Now, I know you and the Hobbyist Miner had some pretty detailed discussions about the structure and hardware requirements and stuff like that. And there's going to be, it seems like, maybe a tiered structure. So certain jobs will go to GPUs of this caliber and CPUs, and you've got so many PCIe lanes with this CPU and so on. But what can you tell us about that tiered structure?
Well, now you're getting outside of my bailiwick because I know just enough to be dangerous, but there will be a tiered structure specifically around which I always say there's strength in numbers because I would rather have more than just a few. So my 1070 Ti's are dusted off and they're ready to go. And there's a reason for that. It's because you can loop them in and you can have volume versus, one or two cards. So as far as the tiered payment structure, we're probably not going to get that in our first iteration. It'll probably just be carte blanche across the board. As we start to refine the process and really start to dig down into how we're handling the compute allocation, then I think you'll start to see more of the tiered process come into play. Someone like Akash, they're deploying GPUs on their platform. I think they're A something. I can't remember the name of the graphics card, but it's specifically an AI-based model. Flux is going to do the same thing, but we would just put that in as a resource. And as a matter of fact, we could work with Akash to allow our cards to leave our network to work with their network. So these are all things that, it's going to take us the better part of another 2 years to really have it baked out the way we want it. But you're going to see our model within the next probably 3 or 4 months. You're going to start to be able to benchmark your system, start to set yourself up, get ready for proof of use work. And then by the end of the year, we want to go live.
Awesome. That was going to be one of my last questions, and that's when we can expect to see it launched. But going back to the hardware requirements, I've been doing a lot of investigating, and I'm very green in the subject matter. But I'm learning that if you've got some major GPUs, let's say for instance you've got several 4090s or something like that, when it comes to proof of useful work, a lot of this consumer level hardware really won't be able to utilize some of the GPUs that we have. And a lot of people have been asking about, I've got an Octominer, is that going to be good enough? What can you tell us about hardware requirements? And I know that Flux doesn't want people rushing out and buying hardware because a lot of this stuff is still, we don't know exactly how all of it's going to function. But can you elaborate any further on the difference between running consumer grade and server level type hardware?
Yeah, it's going to take research. And the first version of proof of use of work will be benchmarking, where you'll provide information back on your hardware requirements or your current hardware setup, which is going to allow us to adjust our process appropriately. So it's really a discovery piece. You know what I mean? We don't want to come out and arbitrarily say these are the only graphics cards you can use and these are the only motherboards, bus speed, all this other stuff. We want to make sure that we get input from the community as well. So I can't really give you specs at this particular point in time because I don't even know them myself. I wish I did, because I'd be stacking, gear myself, because I have been, actually I did just commit to 1,000 cards to start mining again with proof of use work. Yeah, I know. Well, it was one of those things where I'd been out of it for a while, and I still had a couple graphics cards here and there and played around with it. It was more fun than anything, and I run more nodes. And we were having a team meeting, and I saw the pieces starting to come together, and I did a costing model, and I was like, yeah, I need to get some graphics cards. You know what I mean? Like, this is going to be legit. So, I was excited. I bought 1,000 of them, and, probably we'll have more down the road.
Well, man, I know this great channel on YouTube that covers stuff like this if you need any help with that. So.
Hell yeah. Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it's going to be a lot of fun standing it up, and I'm going to invite some folks to come over and participate and be part of the process, because I think it's fun, especially for the communities as well, to be participatory in this, because it's really for all of us. I always say I might be the co-founder, but all I am is a community member. I happen to be pretty vocal community member, but the nice thing about Flux is it creates a family. It's like-minded, good ethos, and you get to see these things grow together, which is a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, man, I think we've pretty much covered most of the important questions that the audience had for you. Again, I want to thank you for coming on the channel and talking about this stuff. Very excited for it, man. I know a lot of people are, and I know there's a lot of different options out there for us miners, but I just want to remind everybody that don't sleep on Flux. There's been a lot of noise in the space, and we've got a lot of different options now. But it's important to kind of pay attention. If you guys aren't in their Discord, if you're not paying attention to what's going on, Daniel, can you share with us some of the best resources for everybody out there?
Absolutely. You can follow, or you can check us out at runonflux.io. You can join us in our Discord. Follow us on Twitter. It's @runonflux. If you want to follow me personally, it's @DAK_flux. And yeah, really a vibrant community. We have a Telegram as well. Be careful going there. It could be a bit cancerous. But Discord is really a great place if you really want to get info and really bond with the community.
Awesome, man. Daniel, thanks again for being here, brother. I appreciate it. And for those of you that are still watching, thank you for being here. Make sure you hit that like and hit the subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you on the next one.